Hello, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Experience Matters show. So, as always, right, the goal of the show is to bring in subject matter experts and the CX and the research industry to talk about their experiences, share best practices. So, basically, we can learn off of them, right? This show is pretty much exactly that. So we've got Disha Bhatnagar, who leads the research and customer experience, the entire vertical for Kasam, which is Southeast Asia's largest integrated e-commerce platform. Right? So they started way back in 2015, and now they spread across multiple countries. I think they're there in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand as well. Disha, thank you so much for taking the time and being a part of the show.
Pleasure, Shibani. Anything for CX.
Right, absolutely. That's exactly what I say. How's it going? We'll just give it a minute or so for more people to join us live. Today is a work from home day for you.
Yes, it's a work from home. Still trying to balance safety versus productivity.
Right. But do you actually find that it is more productive when you're at office? Is that the general, sentiment amongst the employees as well?
I think it's very debatable. It had different school of thoughts. For me personally, because I'm in a role which cuts across people, and it has a lot of collaboration, brainstorming, and making things happen on ground. I personally prefer just not by the character, but also by the energies of office. It makes me feel the brand and move things faster.
That is true. And also you're not disturbed by people ringing the bell and cooking things in the kitchen. And, there's always background noises, always part of Zoom calls. Right? So what do you all do? You all do 3 days in office, 2 days at home? Is it just, every day come into office?
It's quite flexible here in Kasam. It really depends upon how big is your team size. You can alternate, you can shuttle, you can come for a half day. It's very flexible. I think we all are owners of our own safety, but there's no hard and fast rule as such.
Got it. Awesome. So at QuestionPro, it's pretty much work from home everywhere. Unless you want to go into the office, then you can choose to go into the office. But otherwise, it is work from home. I've been working from home now ever since the pandemic started, and I can't even imagine going into office every day. But so luckily we're both in companies that allow us to do exactly what we like and how we like it. Right?
Yeah, I think that's a major contribution. Yeah.
We've got a few people on. Shall we kick this off? So, but everyone has joined. We've discussed on the previous shows really how that ground level accountability is really imperative for a good CX program. And the experience program that Disha has designed and built at Kasam is really a textbook example of this. So we wanted her to join so that she can talk about what is involved in setting up that end-to-end experience solution, right? What are the roadblocks that you typically face when you have these solutions and you're trying to get it rolled out? And really, what does that solution look like for Kasam, right? And has it had an impact on the business? What has that impact been? How do you track it? Really, how do you go about from a strategic point of view as well as from a tactical point of view to get a program like this up and running? With that, Disha, do you want to just walk us through, what really is involved in this end-to-end experience? Such a broad term, so many things go into it. Where do you start and how do you get this design?
A lot of questions, Shibani, but I think the journey has just begun. I won't say we are there yet. It's always, a continuous journey of improvement as the experience matters says itself. I think if I still have to, just share my experiences, what we are doing here in Kasam and improving. Usually customer journey maps basically are the starting point of everything, before even you start tracking or even before you start putting experience measurement in practice, you have to, and your stakeholders, your partners and collaborators have to know what is the customer journey like. So customer journey maps is usually, people can definitely share, you yourself can share examples. For us here at Kasam, our journey is very, very unique. We are trying to rebuild and redefine the category. So it's a quite an unique mix of online and offline journey. We call it hybrid journey. And there I would say from my past experiences and here in Kasam as well, customer journey maps are usually the starting point of how you even build your journeys to identify which are the critical touch points, which are the touch points of measurement. And then only you can start plotting, your interactions with your customers and your partners on it, whether it is inbound or outbound. Once you have the journey map defined, then only you can start, what I have to track, and then which touch points are basically in control, out of control, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. So is it, for all of these touch points, do you have a particular, is it NPS that you're tracking at an overall, for the transactional NPS, do you run relationship as well? What did you all really start off with at the initial stages of rolling out the program?
Yes, I think it's a very, very dynamic question. Because different businesses really have different objectives. What are they ultimately looking at? If you're chasing loyalty, then yes, NPS is your go-to metric. If you are chasing, process improvement, continuous improvements, then CSAT and even customer effort score becomes your, more tangible metric. So how Karsam is being beautifully, designing it and being very dynamic and fluid about it is that in the entire customer journey, because that's what I said, the starting point of any experience measurement metric has to be customer journey. In the customer journey, you just identified those are the touch points we leak customers. It's a dropping touch point actually, and those are the touch point where you convert customer. All the converting touch points are basically your loyalty touch points, which are then tied back to NPS, which is your loyalty metric. Whereas dropping touch points is essentially your CSAT or your effort scores.
So is this being tracked, I'm assuming on a monthly basis and then rolled up for the company on a monthly, on a quarterly? How do you all look and track these numbers?
So it's a culture of CX actually. I mean, if it is about top-down reporting, then we can define the frequency to a monthly or a quarterly or even a semi-annually kind of reports. If it is to go to your annual reports and maybe your investors and board, maybe an yearly number. But here in Kasam, because we especially into a service industry, we are very, very agile in tracking. Actually, we are tracking it at a fortnightly level. So it's very agile. Yeah. So
got it.
It really depends upon, reporting versus actionability.
Absolutely. So for this, this broader term that I mentioned, the end-to-end experience management, right? So CX and collecting feedback on these touch points, the transactional NPS, bringing in relationship, all of that. Apart from that, is there anything else that falls into this category?
Actually, a lot of things. Actually, I mean, right from the way we are crafting it to the designing it, and from the current state to an ideal state, I think it's a very triangulated approach. Some even call it a loop-based approach because it's not only a CX; it has to tie back to your employee experience, your brand experience, your social experience, your community experience. Because see, everything then contribute to how you serve, what kind of products you offer, how you service them, right from pre, post, and even after sales experience for Kasam in a particular sense. So for I think any ideal customer experience solution, it must at some point of time talk hand in hand with brand, with social, and with even with employee experience.
Got it. So in for somebody who's let's say a typical an e-commerce company itself, where do you suggest that they start, right? Because you can't have all of these multiple things happening at the same time. It'll probably end up in a failed program. So where do you suggest they start?
Where do I suggest, or maybe where do I observe most of the companies stuck is that CX is a very, very broad term. It's an ideology, it's a culture in itself. So I think the biggest roadblock which I would have observed in some of the organizations and partners is the ownership of CX. Where does it belong? Is it a top-down approach? Is it a bottom-up approach? Is it being tracked and monitored because it's an organizational goal, or is it a profitability KPI? So the biggest roadblock for CX is ownership, clarity of goals, organizational belief in it. And then once the ownership is defined, like in some of the organization, it's beautifully crafted under, OKRs and KPIs.
Yes.
So that for me is like, a culture where, people think that customer problem is my problem, because then only you will achieve a path to profitability. They are,
Absolutely.
I mean, you can add to it. You are a CX specialist. It's the ownership that where does CX belong? It's just not a department. It's an overall value of a company.
Absolutely. No, because that's also things that we've seen, right? Unless the top down, you can have senior management shouting at the top of their voices that, this is important. Unless they actually take ownership of those metrics, your numbers are not going to move unless you get buy-in from all of these different departments, right? So how do you build that culture at Kasam? I'm sure, because there are so many departments involved. It's not just the CX team trying to run and improve, right? Unless you've got all from your finance team to your tech development team to your frontline managers, all of them are involved in building this score. How do you build that culture within the organization?
I'm still trying, actually. Even I won't really say that we are there yet, but see, CX is also an everyday job. It's not a project. It's not something which is like a product which is delivered and then you are done with it. CX is basically, it's an exercise. You have to do it every day, right? So what approach I follow here in Kasam is that I think I'm fortunate that our management, our leaders are, core believers of CX. Even CX, Shibani, you can even check our website. Customer first is actually our value, right? So it makes my job slightly more easy that at least I have the first roadblock solved, which is a belief on CX. But it's a very 360 approach. You have to go bottoms up in creating awareness, creating, people embracing CS, that customer is important, customer experience, make sure it reduces your marketing cost, it reduces your acquisition cost. It has a lot of, you can say, commercial layers attached to it. So awareness building, acceptability, embracing CX, and then definitely your culture of presentations, OKRs, goals, mapping CX, showcasing and shouting improvements, all those things go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Do you, just from a tactical perspective, do you bring in incentives to these KPIs? Is that something that you all believe in, that there has to be, monetary benefit as well, or some sort of benefit if you have your numbers going up? Or is it just building that culture and they want to provide, just overall better customer experience?
See, once again, it's very debatable basis, which category do you belong to and how many frontliners, really operate in your category. In a service and an automobile kind of category like us, where, our brand ambassadors are basically people on the ground. Our sales representative, our Kasam consultant, our retail center. I think for frontliners, a bit of reward recognition is important. Definitely, yes. When you make it's a very healthy competition between, their compliments, their NPS score, store level CSAT score. It not only become a score, it becomes a very healthy way to compete with each other. So why not? I encourage that, at least in the initial stages of CX journey, yes.
Yeah, and it's not just theory, right? Because we work with you, obviously, with your CX program. And unlike a lot of our clients, we have, when we're doing demos and when we're doing training sessions, we've got like 20, 25 people listening to us, asking questions, really interested in how do they go about looking at their scores, how do they go about, analyzing the data that comes in and looking at those improvement areas and things like that. So it is not just, something that I think the culture has already been built in. Otherwise, you're not going to get people interested. You can force people to join the call, but not force people to ask questions and be interested in analyzing that data, right? So it's really something that Kasam has inbuilt already.
Trying.
Just in Kasam itself, Disha, do you want to just walk us through what does this program look like, right? You have, of course, your CX program that you're building out. You've got multiple touch points already that are live and you want to expand that program. What else is Kasam looking at from this whole experience journey?
So, as I said, we are still, we just started with our journey a few months back. We are still trying to identify the best practices and how can we make it more actionable. The two kind of approaches which we have, discussed, and it really works very well for Kasam is, two very distinct approaches, which is daily firefighting approach and more strategic operational excellence approach within the same CX. So how we use and I come back to QuestionPro because you guys are partnering with us and that how we are doing it. So our approach is very DIY, which means we give accessibility and visibility to everybody who should be responsible to drive CX. Whereas the platform should be absolutely easy to use, totally, DIY concept. Just go, get your hands dirty, compare results, see when you move the needle, what moves, how does your single level of score or a detractors impact your overall store results. So I think easy usage, acceptability, and a more of firefighting approach, which means daily resolution, daily tracking, seeing the daily impact. That's one part of CX. Another part of CX, which is more a strategic part of CX, is that we not only resolve cases. We don't only look at, oh, people are unhappy, resolve them. Oh, we close the case, we close the tickets. No, I mean that's important, but that's one part of it. The second part of it is only about how do you draw those learnings and conclusion to improve your process efficiencies. To give rise to those products so that those problems don't happen again. And here, I think having a platform such as yours help us because we have approach one, where we can, raise the ticket, create tickets, tag our employees. The approach two is a management approach where we can showcase them when we move the needle, such as churn analysis and PS Plus. How does it impact the organizational goals?
Absolutely. And these, improvement areas, what else can be done? What are the additional, these are the three aspects that we're going to work on. Does that come from your team, or do you give that accountability and ownership to those individual, KPI owners?
I think it's a two-way approach. We don't pass down what need to be done. So our CX is not very prescriptive CS. It's very collaborative. So we hear from them because we have regional markets, local markets. There is a bit of structural, I think conflicts in every market. We listen from them, a customized approach by what works. We take the solution, but we are trying to find those solutions which is consistent across markets, across functions, and those becomes more like unified suggestions for different problem statements.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you said that you're building it out. It's only been a few months now. Are you looking at the ROI of this whole program? Because there's a lot of, apart from investment in a platform, there's a lot of time that's involved in as well, right, from the entire team. Have you started looking at that? Is it too early for Qasim right now? What goes into the ROI bit?
ROI is always, you can say, an ongoing parallel debate with CX. But yes, here in Qasim, I wouldn't say, because I've been telling that we are still in the building and improvement stage. We are not there yet. ROI will come to the play maybe in next few months from now. It's definitely one of the goals we want to achieve. And as I was mentioning earlier, the core goal is that we want to tie it back to our customer acquisition, customer retention, and customer, you can say, uplift cost, because you have various lines of businesses, and a happy customer is tend to, even make your social experience, your brand experience, your brand advocacy, and even your ancillary business is a lot more, stronger once he has a primary good experience. So yes, a different models and methods of ROIs are linked to CX, but it's not really, I would say, to do tomorrow, but sooner or later it has to go hand in hand with CX, definitely.
Awesome. Have you seen an impact already on your business? Because now NPS couple of months, CSAT couple of months. Have you seen an impact already?
If you're talking about the scores, yes. If you are talking about the yes, we have actually, like I was just discussing with my team yesterday, we are improving. We just want to know, is it because we are just doing it so right, or we are actually making some impact with the customer? Our latest was quite in a very decent category of NPS. The industry average is around maybe 60 plus is already considered good, and we are there yet. True.
Because I've had clients in the past where you have your NPS score, and then they'll be like, just let's not send out these surveys to the customers who we know are unhappy, and then they see an uplift in their NPS, and they're like, everyone's high-fiving, because you just change the approach, really not put in any sort of improvement. But that's different with Qasim, right? The idea is to put in those improvements. The idea is to have an impact on the customer at the end of the day, which is honestly fabulous to see. So
Yes, and then you have your check and balance. It's not only NPS, Shibani, you will agree one score. You have to see social sentiments, you have to see email complaints, hotline complaint, telephonic system. So if everything is making a cohesive story, then your even NPS 90 looks good. Otherwise, your NPS 90 with your social media flooding with complaint doesn't add up, really.
yeah,
So
yeah, true. Yeah, all your the thing that investors need to look at is, okay, you give me an NPS score, also give me a scores from all these different touch points, and then you're in soup, right?
no. We report 360, and that's why, a healthy NPS is always questionable that do you really have that level of loyalty across your platforms, or it's
Yeah,
just you are
yeah,
selecting and, smartly designing your surveys to uplift your score. So it's always
yeah.
questionable.
Yeah, and just a sudden increase in NPS, right, by whatever 5 points, 10 points. That's not really realistic. It means that you change the way maybe you're asking the questions or who you're asking the questions to, or dropping a couple of touch points. It has to be a gradual increase because
Yeah.
for all round, that customer experience, it's not as quick, over 1 month that you can see an increase. So
I mean, we as a CX
yeah,
practicer believe that it should not be an
yeah,
abrupt change. Otherwise,
yeah,
something is wrong. Please go and
something is
check.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next, Disha? For Qasim, I know you're looking at multiple aspects as well. How do you take this now to the next level? Because we're pretty much on track with your touch points that you're collecting. It's smooth, it's regular. You're looking at the feedback. So what's next?
Many things, Shivani, many things. Touch point optimization is always an ongoing approach. As I was mentioning, CX is never a project which you think, oh, I've delivered it now. It's like healthy diet. It's like exercise. You have to do to deliver it every day. So we
Unfortunately,
keep
yes.
monitoring. Yeah, we keep monitoring touch points, strengthening response rate, engaging with customers. And then I think another part is that how do you then optimize your happy customers?
Yeah.
Because it goes into level of community management, community
Mm.
engagement, reputation building. So I mean, mature CX practices also form those subgroups of your customer personas, that how do
Yeah.
you then want to take it to next level. We are not
Yeah.
there yet, honestly, but the but
Mm.
the mid to long term goal will be, if I have those happy customer, how do I then convert them into brand
Mm.
endorsements, brand advocacy, real life testimonials, linking them to the website, testimonials. I mean, a lot of things can be done.
Yeah.
It's just that, at what level of organizational maturity you have in order to
Mm.
even put some commercial practices to your CX.
Absolutely, Disha. This has honestly been a very insightful session, simply because it is, what you've built is a successful program, all in a time span of a few months, right? Been able to look at the culture, been able to have a consistent number that you can report across all of those touch points, and just outside of CX as well, the things that you can do. So for everyone who's joined, right, it is so much more than just putting your touch points in place. Yes, that can be step one, but how do you look at the other aspects of as well? And with technology partners, it allows you to ramp up that much quicker, right? Because in the past, within a couple of months, there's no way that you can have a consistent program in place. But it's definitely possible now with all of your technology, your platforms, even with QuestionPro, the agileness of the whole industry really has a huge impact in the end on the business itself, right? With that, Disha, do you have any closing thoughts, comments, advice for all of our viewers here?
Keep it simple. Keep
Mm-hmm.
it everyday practice and tie it somewhere to your organization culture. And as I said, just CX has is like everyday prayers. Just do it every day.
Wonderful. So we've got a few questions in. Let me just put that up on the screen. So a question for Disha. As a CX leader, how have you aligned the values of customer centricity and customer first value within the leaders of your organization across functions? Yeah. How do you
Okay.
go about selling that? Yeah. Mm.
Actually, it's a kind of simple thing for me to do in Kasam. Honestly, I'm being very candid here. I don't want to take any major compliments for him, because Kasam's journey was always customer centric. So, slightly for me, this battle was kindly simple battle as compared to the previous, journeys I have built in. But for Kasam, as I entered Kasam, their first value was customer first. In fact, the office has an entire wall about, customer first as a signatory wall. And then anybody who does a good job in CX go there and paste the picture. So,
Awesome.
customer, it's their centricity anyway. So for me, I mean, honestly, to this question, it was slightly easy. But if I have to give an example of the previous organization, it started top down, but it was executed and implemented bottoms up. How I mean, just to put things into very simple perspective, you definitely need to have the buy-in of the leaders to show them what CX can do in terms of the revenue and commercial profitability. Because then only they will realize that experience matters actually means business sustainability, actually means marketing cost down, actually, because they invest a lot of money in marketing and brand visibility. The minute you start talking in a commercial language of CX, you got the buy. And then you have a bottoms up approach, which is very layman, easy, DIY, to make them feel heroes. When they are the heroes of their CX, and you have town halls and you reward them, and you give them that feel good factor, it becomes it's a slow burning, but it definitely takes into account action.
Wonderful. And that's and I think we spoke about this on our last show as well. You don't need to have a full-fledged program in place to show impact, right? You can have a smaller impact where there is an eventual impact on the business metric that you can use to sell the program and then get that investment, get that buy-in from the leaders. So fantastic. If there are any other questions, please feel free to, you've got our details on the post. You can reach out to us individually. You can leave the comments. We will get back to you. I speak to Disha for work almost, twice a week. So if there are questions that I can't answer, I will get her knowledge and get her to share her experience and definitely get back to you. But with that, Disha, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And thank you everyone for joining, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Pleasure, Shibani. Thank you. Good luck, everybody. Keep practicing CX. Bye.
Yeah.